To First Minister's question time. Question number 1, Joanne Lamont.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister what engagements he has planned for the rest of the day.
First Minister.
I'm sure the whole Chamber, Presiding Officer, was to join with me in congratulating Perth on achieving city status. Later today, I'll have meetings to take forward the Government's programme for Scotland.
Joanne Lamont.
Thank you very much. Can the First Minister explain why Scottish families today are facing some of the highest childcare costs in Europe, while his government offers less help than Nick Clegg?
First Minister.
Well, as Joanne Lamont knows, in the last term of office, we took the free availability of childcare in Scotland from the 425 hours we inherited to 475 hours, and I'm sure she'll welcome the pledge which will go into legislation to make sure it's available to everyone in Scotland, across all areas of Scotland, to move that to 600 hours, which will give us the best package of childcare and preschool facilities of any country in these islands.
Joanne Lamont. Joanne Lamont.
I note the First Minister didn't answer the question of why we're still in the place that we are, but nothing new there. On Saturday, the First Minister, who has of course never knowingly undersold his own position, as he said, promised the best package of free nursery education on offer anywhere in the United Kingdom. Just not yet. Nothing new here then. We heard this same pledge in the SNP manifesto in 2007. Remember that one, filed in the fiction section of a library near you. We know what happened. We know what happened with that pledge, promised in 2007, dumped by Mike Russell in 2009. The First Minister repackaged it on Saturday, and we need to wait until after the referendum in 2014 before he delivers it. Why has he failed to deliver on his own pledge? Why has he let Scottish families and Scottish children down?
First Minister.
Well, can I say to Joanne Lamont, our ability to deliver on the programme was judged by the people of Scotland last year in an election. And can I just correct her on the costs? And she said that I didn't answer her question directly. She's wrong in terms of the costs across these islands. The nursery 2 years and over, the average in England is £103.19. The average in Scotland is £101.49. Nursery under 2 is £94.52 in Scotland, £98.75. Now, these are very substantial childcare costs. And one of the arguments that's put forward, I think persuasively, is that it's a function of the supply and affordability, which can drive up costs in certain instances. And therefore, the more publicly funded childcare and preschool that's on offer, then that will have two great beneficial effects. Firstly, it will help the families who are getting that availability of childcare and nursery, and secondly, it will help to drive down costs in terms of other provisions. So the judgment of the people of Scotland in terms of the ability of a minority SNP government over 4 years was made in the May election. The judgment of the people of Scotland on the Labour Party's attitude was also made last year in May. So I would hope that even if on so many issues Joanne Lamont cannot bring the Labour Party into a more positive position, at least on this issue, she will now commit to supporting the legislation which will enshrine this in law, which will make available 600 hours to the families across Scotland.
Joanne Lamont.
If we were in power in 2007, we would now be in a position that the rest of them. And I can assure you, if you had worked out how important public provision was, perhaps you might have acted a little earlier rather than now. We worked out this a long time ago, because what families need is action now, not a clause in a children's bill and not a 2 years delay. Families don't need legislation in the future. They need a government now which will provide the funding to deliver reliable and affordable childcare when people need it. The First Minister has the power now. Why does he not exercise it? On Saturday, the First Minister promised a bill, and it might be news to him, but working families all over Scotland already have a bill for childcare, and it's a pretty expensive one. Families need this support now. Why do we have to wait another 2 years for the First Minister to put a clause in a bill, never mind actually delivering what people need?
First Minister.
If the Labour Party was so keen on this issue, then why on earth didn't they implement it in the 8 years they were in power? Why did we inherit 425 hours, which we increased to 475 hours? And if after 8 years, when Joanne Lamont was a minister, only then did Labour decide...
Order. We'll hear the First Minister, please.
Well, I'm not surprised, Presiding Officer, I don't want to hear this, because it's inconvenient to have to remind them of the dreadful record of the Labour Party government. But if after the 8 years there was a conversion in 2007, which if only the Labour Party had been re-elected, they would have implemented, then why didn't they implement it south of the border where they were still in government? The record of the Labour Party up to 2007 in government was judged by the Scottish people harshly. The record of the Labour Party in opposition to 2011 was judged by the Scottish people even more harshly. And one of the key reasons for that dramatic failure when Joanne Lamont was the deputy leader of the party was their total, absolute negativity. So can they please bring themselves at this stage to welcome an announcement to take the childcare provision to 600 hours to benefit every single family across every area of Scotland?
Joanne Lamont.
If that's the First Minister being positive about me, God help me when he decides to start turning on me. The reality is that I, never mind as a minister, as a mother for 8 years, got the benefit of what Labour did on child. And indeed, in Glasgow now, with a Labour Council, we've got the benefit of those hours.
We will hear the member. Order.
What we have here is another episode of the Manana government. Excuses today, jam not even tomorrow, but in 2 years' time, maybe. Working families are struggling now, and the First Minister simply doesn't get it. Fewer children in nursery, after-school clubs closing down, and the childcare on offer simply not meeting their needs. The First Minister said on Saturday, "In devolved Scotland, we can demand. In an independent Scotland, we can deliver." That was obviously for the children at the back there. Because it's so predictable. So predictable. Because, you see, what he really meant is that he won't deliver until he gets his way in a referendum. Talk about an abuse of power. Because the reality is, for the First Minister, this issue is not actually about childcare. It's about what really gets him excited, and that's the Constitution. Well, in this devolved Scotland, families can't wait, won't wait, and we insist that he delivers for Scottish families now. Will the First Minister take this issue seriously, take the people of this country seriously, and act now to help Scottish families?
First Minister.
Well, I've often said to Joanne Lamont that
First Minister.
Move off script. After that, I think perhaps you should stay on script in the future. I don't think that Glasgow Council is Joanne Lamont's strongest suit at the present moment. You're losing councillors in Glasgow even quicker than you lost votes in the Scottish election. If what we inherited from Labour was so wonderful, then why did the last minority SNP government, as part of the Concordat with Scottish local government, have to increase the provision from 425 hours, which we inherited, to 475 hours? And in terms of looking forward, I was complimented, of course, about the 18 mentions of myself and Joanne Lamont's speech at the Labour Party conference 2 weeks ago, but I think it's rather better to lay out policies as we did at our conference on the 2,500 young people to give them a life opportunity, the £10 million additional Commonwealth Games legacy fund, that every SNP council in Scotland will introduce the living wage, as the SNP government has done, and to put into legislation to give that guarantee to families across Scotland of 600 hours of childcare and pre-nursery education.
Question number 2, Ruth Davidson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister when he will next meet the Secretary of State for Scotland.
First Minister.
No plans, near future.
Ruth Davidson.
Earlier this week, the Scottish Medicines Consortium decided not to approve the drug abiraterone to men in Scotland suffering from advanced prostate cancer, a drug which has been used so successfully to extend the life of Mr McGrahy when the Scottish Government sent him home to die. In a battle against a cancer which costs so many hundreds of Scottish men their lives every year, there have been few advances. This drug is one. Will the First Minister act to give cancer sufferers greater access to important new drugs?
First Minister.
It's a hugely serious and important issue, and everybody in this chamber recognises, as new drugs come onto the marketplace, understandably, and it is totally understandable, that people and patients groups who are afflicted with serious conditions have a tremendous desire to see every new drug available. But can I say in all seriousness to Ruth Davidson, the SMC process, which has been in Scotland now for 10 years, is hugely and substantially admired because of its independence and its thoroughness. Over that 10 years, there hasn't been a single case of any government overruling an SMC judgment. And of course, there is a very substantial and good reason for that. What happens now is that the drug company concerned, as indicated, it's going to go back and resubmit. The SMC has the extraordinary difficult task of judging the efficacy of treatment against the budgetary constraints which inevitably apply in any health service. If the position of the SMC, or NICE for that matter, in England, was to accept every submission that came forward, it would be impossible to sustain the drugs budget. They have to do it in criteria. And I do think Ruth Davidson should pay considerable attention to what a number of the cancer charities have been saying about the obligations on drugs company with new drugs coming forward to try and make them available to the National Health Service at a cost which can be afforded.
Ruth Davidson.
The First Minister misrepresents what I was asking. I wasn't asking him to overrule the SMC, which is indeed independent and thorough. There is an obvious solution here, a Scottish Cancer Drugs Fund. My predecessor, Annabel Goldie, raised it 14 months ago with the First Minister. Conservatives then met with him and his Health Secretary. We have since brought it to the Chamber for debate as lately as September. In other parts of the UK, we have seen the huge impact that this can make on sufferers and their families. To date, 12,000 people have had their lives extended through the Cancer Drugs Fund. What possible excuse does the First Minister have to refuse the same opportunity to cancer sufferers in Scotland? Government is about choices. The First Minister chose to find £50 million to give free prescriptions to people like himself who can afford to pay for them. But he is choosing not to find a more modest sum to extend and approve the lives of Scots with fatal conditions. Will the First Minister now make a different choice? Will he now, 14 months down the line, after countless premature deaths, reconsider, intervene and support a Scottish Cancer Drugs Fund?
First Minister.
Well, Ruth Davidson says that she didn't suggest that ministers should overrule the SMC. Of course, her health spokesman did, and he shouldn't have done that, because that is a process which depends on its independence for its effectiveness. And it is not the case that medicines, even those not approved by the SMC, can't be made available to patients in Scotland. We have the process of individual patient treatment requests. 126 medicines were requested through that process within NHS Scotland, of medicines which are not approved by SMC as yet, and 87 of these requests were approved. 39 were not approved. Ruth Davison presents to this chamber the impression that the Cancer Drugs Fund initiative taking place in England is one which is substantially supported. Can I remind her that the cancer charities Myeloma UK, Breakthrough Breast Cancer, Macmillan Cancer Support issued a briefing paper for the Scottish parliamentary debate on whether or not Scotland should have a Cancer Drugs Fund, and said, quote, "The Cancer Drugs Fund does not address the root causes of why patients may be denied access to treatment." Or her own Tory MP colleague, Pauline Latham, quote, from the 26th of December last year, quote, "The Cancer Drugs Fund was set up to stop this kind of lottery in my area. It is not fit for purpose and it's not working for the benefit of patients." So this chamber did consider the question of the Cancer Drugs Fund and paid attention to the many submissions that we received, suggesting that that was not the best way forward. Can I suggest to her that the process we have in Scotland works effectively? 60% of the drugs which are resubmitted on a more reasonable cost basis after initially being turned down by the SMC are then approved. I hope and believe that people, now that Ruth Davison has said that we shouldn't interfere with that process, understand the necessity of the independence and the rigour of the SMC process. And now that she is aware, as I'm sure she is, that the non-approval of a drug does not mean there is still the process of individual patient treatment requests, where an individual clinician can go on the precise circumstances of a patient and argue on therapeutic value, has had a great deal of efficacy where it's been applied. I do think on this subject, above all, that this chamber, in terms of our responsibility to the people of Scotland, and particularly people who are suffering from grievous diseases, should be able to see the substance and efforts that have been made to enable to give people in Scotland the best possible treatment.
Mary Scanlon.
Presiding Officer, given the highly critical report by the Accounts Commission into the Highlands and Islands Fire and Rescue Service, which highlighted 35 substandard fire stations, lack of investment in vehicles and IT, and most damaging of all, the lack of training, equipment and health and safety resilience for frontline firefighters, can I ask the First Minister if he will ensure that a thorough review is now undertaken to find out how things went so badly wrong with this service and to help prevent this ever happening again?
First Minister.
I think it's right and proper to give time for the board to consider the response to the Accounts Commission report, and I see that the meeting on Monday the 19th is to consider possible terms of reference for an inquiry. I'm pleased to see that there was significant support from our other 7 fire and rescue services, including the secondment of a number of staff being made available to assist the Highland Board in addressing the challenges it currently faces. I would say, of course, that a single fire service will have access to these wider management resources to deploy where they are most needed as a matter of course.
Christine Graham.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I ask the First Minister, given the allegations in the recent McGrahy biography and in the press of the Crown actions throughout the prosecution appeal process, if it is possible, through the Inquiries Act 2005, to instruct an independent examination of these allegations against the Crown, and indeed whether this might also fall within the remit of the Inspectorate of Prosecution?
First Minister.
The appropriate body to determine the guilt or innocence is, of course, a court of law. But I think what the recent media coverage indicates that it's absolutely imperative that the Commission are given the powers they need to release the full statement of reasons in this case. I have to say that although obviously I welcome disclosure, because we are trying to get the disclosure of the full SCCRC report, I think that's imperative. I don't actually think that partial disclosure, particularly when it's done on a selective basis, is actually assisting this debate. Except for this, I cannot see any possible reason for having obstacles in the way of the full disclosure and publication of the complete SCCRC report, and I hope the Chamber can unite as far as possible as far as within our powers, to make sure that this happens.
Neil Bibby.
The First Minister may be aware from an article in today's Evening Times about the completely unacceptable treatment of Mrs Maureen Leckie, a 73-year-old stroke victim from Paisley, who was forced to dry herself with pillowcases after a shower in the RAH because there was no clean towels available. I note the Health Board have today apologised to Maureen and her family. Maureen has spoken out about this because she doesn't want others to suffer the same experience as she did. Can I ask the First Minister what action he will take to ensure this does not happen again at the RAH or indeed any other hospital?
First Minister.
Well, I'll discuss the matter with the Health Secretary, take appropriate action and write to the member. Can I say, however, that the individual cases and people speaking out are a very important part of the process of constant improvement in our health service. And these cases have to be dealt with, and the boards understand that, and the processes are in place to make sure that it happens. That shouldn't deflect anybody in this chamber from the recognition that our health service and our health service workers are held in the highest regard, and indeed higher regard than ever before, in terms of public levels of satisfaction.
Question number 3, Willie Rennie.
To ask the First Minister what issues will be discussed at the next meeting of the Cabinet.
First Minister.
Issues of importance to the people of Scotland.
Willie Rennie.
Last week, I warned the First Minister about his unhealthy relationship with Rupert Murdoch. This week, the First Minister's old friend, Donald Trump, turned into a foe. Can I press him on another rich and powerful friend and his influence on government policy? The First Minister will know that I agree with him on equal marriage for gay people. I want to remove the barriers that prevent churches and other organisations from conducting same-sex marriages if they choose to. But Brian Souter, a donor to the SNP, has well-known views against equality for gay people. Can the First Minister confirm to me that he won't give in to Brian Souter and he'll stand up for what is right on equal marriage?
First Minister.
You know, I understand that the Liberal Democrats' ethos in politics, as it used to be, was to seek consensus and agreement and find areas where the parties could unite together. Two things have happened. Even when the Liberal Democrat leader says he's seeking consensus, he manages to deploy it in such a way as to try and make that consensus impossible. And secondly, people in Scotland didn't realise, when the Liberals said they were seeking consensus before the last UK general election, that the consensus they were seeking was the continuation of Westminster Tory rule in Scotland.
Willie Rennie.
Observers will note the First Minister did not answer my question. It's simple. It's simple. Can he guarantee that he won't give in to Brian Souter? Equal marriage will be a mark of a modern Scotland. Last Sunday saw a big push by some churches to block the change. A cardinal said it was grotesque. An archbishop said there was a duty to stop it. The group, Scotland for Marriage, went to the absurd extreme of saying it opened the door for polygamy. These are serious forces against us. I don't want the argument to slip away from us. Can I ask the First Minister again, will he stand up to Brian Souter and will he take a lead for equality in Scotland?
First Minister.
I don't think, in terms of raising the issue to the level of debate that we hope and expect in Scotland, I do agree with Willie Rennie, incidentally, that I think that is something we should aspire to. But that requires all sides of the debate to live up to that particular standard, not one side of it. I made my views on this matter clear during the election that they haven't changed. The point, however, is a very important one. We are in the process of a consultation. That consultation has come in. There's been a massive number of responses. It would right and proper that, as First Minister of Scotland, that consultation process, the consideration of the evidence that's presented, is allowed to take its course. And if I could just say to Willie Rennie, if this chamber, and if the parties in it, when we get to an issue like equal status in marriage, which is an issue with a strong moral dimension, a strong matter of individual conscience, on these issues above all, it behoves politicians who are lecturing to the rest of the society about the care they must take in terms of their language, about having a debate on an issue of principle that's worthy of the name of the Parliament and indeed of the country, that the politicians themselves should try to rise to the challenge that they set other people.
Question number 4, Jamie Hepburn.
Minister, whether the Scottish Government will provide further information on its plans to improve childcare for preschool children.
First Minister.
Well, making a transformational change in childcare support for families, we are committed to making that shift. As the member knows, and as we have discussed already in this very exchange, last part of the next year's Children Bill will legislate for an expansion from 475 hours to a minimum of 600 hours per year of funded early learning and childcare for all 3- and 4-year-olds and 2-year-olds who are looked after in Scotland. That will be the best package of free nursery education on offer anywhere in the UK, a clear statement of faith and commitment to the future. We will use the wisdom and advice, of course, of the cross-party Early Years Task Force to help us ensure the delivery that this provision is flexible to meet the needs of all of Scotland's families.
One moment, Mr Hepburn. There is just far too much chatter off. So could you please concentrate and let us hear what the member and First Minister has to say? Jamie Hepburn.
Thank you, President Officer. Can I thank the First Minister for his response and welcome the Government commitment to extend free nursery provision, not least as a father of a preschool-age child myself. Does the First Minister share the concerns of Save the Children that the introduction of universal credit will make childcare costs more difficult for many families, and the concern of many organisations that the UK Government has reduced the cap for the childcare element of working tax credit from 80% to 70%, adding an average £546 to childcare costs for thousands of Scottish households? Is it not time for this Parliament to have control over tax and benefits so Scottish families aren't left to the vagaries of the Tories and their Liberal friends?
First Minister.
Yes, I think that the Chamber should be aware that the research from the Institute of Fiscal Studies suggests that the changes to the welfare system as a whole being proposed just now will increase the number of children in absolute poverty across the United Kingdom by 500,000 by 2015. Is that not an argument for why we need powers over tax and benefits of children of Scotland to protect them from poverty at the worst excesses of Westminster Government? It seems to me that the disgruntled benches of the Labour Party have a very clear choice before them. Keep backing Tory control over the benefits that will worsen child poverty, or join with us and bring powers to Scotland so we can look after all of Scotland's children.
Question number 5, Drew Smith.
Thank you, President Officer. To ask the First Minister when the Scottish Government will announce its position on same-sex marriage. First Minister.
Well, a hugely important issue. We have received over 50,000 responses to the consultation, the biggest response received to any consultation under devolution. The responses are currently being collated and analysed. We expect to complete that process over the coming months.
Drew Smith.
Can I thank the First Minister for that answer? Any Scottish Government proposals for equal marriage have the support of many members on this side and across the Chamber who have signed the Equal Marriage Pledge. Can the First Minister confirm that the Government will not publish its response to last year's consultation until after the local government elections? And will he further indicate whether there is any good reason why equal marriage could not be achieved before the referendum in 2014?
First Minister.
Well, as the member may well know, that what can be published in terms of government over a campaign period, at least in the local elections, is heavily restricted, as indeed it should be. We are going through the consultation responses. We will make progress on that basis. I hope and believe that all members, regardless of their views across this issue, will recognise the absolute critical importance on this subject, perhaps above all others, that people on all sides of the debate can genuinely see that the process first of consultation and then of analysis and publication is genuine and a proper process. That is exactly the type of process we intend to follow.
Question number 6, Sandra White.
Thank you, President Officer. To ask the First Minister what progress has been made in ensuring that the
Ms White, if you could move your mic.
Thank you. To ask the First Minister what progress has been made in ensuring that the 2014 Commonwealth Games are on time and on budget.
First Minister.
Well, we're 860 days away, I'm told, from the opening ceremony of the Glasgow Games in 2014. I'm delighted to report that preparations remain on time and on budget.
Sandra White.
I thank the First Minister for his reply, and I am pleased that the Commonwealth Games are indeed on time and on budget. The First Minister will be aware that for the Commonwealth Games to be truly successful, it must leave a lasting legacy. Can I therefore ask what steps the Scottish Government is taking to ensure that this legacy, not only for Glasgow, but also for the whole of Scotland, is exactly what is happening?
First Minister.
Well, Sandra White will be aware that last weekend announced a further £10 million Games Legacy Good Active Fund, which will provide new enhanced sports facilities in local communities across Scotland. Construction of the Athletes' Village is nearing completion. That will accommodate approximately 6,500 competitors and officials, but of course after the Games it will be used for a range of housing and affordable needs. The Commonwealth Sports Arena and Velodrome is almost complete. It will be accessible to the public in October, nearly 2 years ahead of the Games. And I think these few but very important examples show that the Government, acting in conjunction with our partners, is determined to ensure that Scots feel the benefit of the Commonwealth Games long after they are finished.
Patricia Ferguson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Like the First Minister, Ms White, I share their enthusiasm for the Commonwealth Games and for what it can bring to Glasgow and to Scotland. But I wonder if the First Minister could tell the Chamber if he is satisfied that the Commonwealth Games will deliver a tangible legacy for all areas of Glasgow.
First Minister. All areas of Glasgow, of course, has a particular prominence as the host city of the Games, and rightly so. And it's going to be extremely important, and I think people in Glasgow can see the advantages being built at the present moment, in addition to the commitments that have been made in terms of local community involvement. So that is a right and proper thing to expect, and I know that the member is well aware of the range of initiatives that have been taken by government and our partners in terms of making that a reality. Can I just point out, however, that the Games also have a legacy across Scotland, and it's very important that Glasgow, rightly as the host city, has the great prominence it deserves. But this is a Games which is backed by the whole country. It's a Glasgow Games backed by Scotland and indeed our many friends across the Commonwealth.
That ends First Minister's question time. I now suspend until 2:15.